Drum and bass and its various subgenres was something that I would listen to religiously back in middle and high school. It had this amount of energy with up-tempo beats that to me was like a huge influence in the way I approach electronic music with my works. This list is going to contain from dance floor and liquid drum and bass to more old school approaches such as jungle, and also some of the darker and more ferocious stuff such as darkstep and skullstep. I decided not to contain stuff such as drill and bass and breakcore as it feels like a totally different direction. And also I decided that this list is going to contain one track per artist, which means that you're going to see 50 different names in the drum and bass sphere with the one track that I consider to be their greatest, which in some cases was kind of a difficult task. So without further ado, here are my 50 favorite drum and bass tracks of all time, one track per artist. At number 50 is Paragon X9 with Chaos Devotion, with an artist that would mostly be known for his contributions on Newgrounds games. Paragon X9's music not only hits you with a dose of nostalgia, the way his music would be incorporated tremendously with a video game aesthetic, but taking some of those ideas as standalone tracks, some of them were actually pretty impressive, even if pretty short in length. My choice is Chaos Devotion, which is possibly the most gritty and apocalyptic out of everything I've heard from him. Pretty simplistic in its structure with a sick bass line and all the other elements like melody and beat following up in a nice cohesive way. There's not much to it, but it's enough for a really strong impression. Number 49 is TC with Where's My Money, possibly one of the main tracks that can get in someone's radar when searching for drum and bass. This banger of a track is Jump Up at its finest, a quirky sample with an amazing build-up that leads to an absolutely sickening drop, a wobbling bass that becomes more and more creative, and a telephone ring sound that becomes part of the beat and the melody. It's a bit of a goofy track, but that's the appeal of Jump Up, such a fun and entertaining idea that really leaves its mark in the 2000s drum and bass scene. At number 48 is Roscoe with What's Up, mostly known for his incredible dubstep cuts alongside influences from house to raggadub. Roscoe's brand new era of Jump Up is nothing but addictive bangers. As expected, the results over here are great, and the biggest highlight of this new EP is the single What's Up. Braggadocious and corny in its nature for sure, but certainly makes you feel like a badass. Loud and intense bass and synths, really nice use of the vocal sampling, and just a really catchy and addictive song that really captures the essence of a drum and bass banger. At number 47 is Bad Company UK with The Nine. It couldn't be a drum and bass list without mentioning some of the pioneers of techstep, with an apocalyptic dystopian future being reflected by the futuristic but also gritty industrial sounds that the genre is known for. Bad Company UK have possibly some of the most iconic works under the umbrella of techstep, and one of their most well-known tracks is a prime indicator of a track that is dark and monotone in its nature, and with a really heavy bass line and sick beat, top-notch atmosphere, and one of the essentials in its subgenre. Number 46 is Limewax's Onky, the audio remix. While it might not be a drastic change or an improvement of the formula that the original Onky from Limewax had, this remix is enough to show the capabilities of audio as a really interesting name in the scene. Bordering between dark and aggressive and regular drum and bass, this track is also this nice balance of intensity and various melodic patterns. There is certainly an edge and a really good transition point between the regular beat and then the inclusion of these rapid fast hi-hats. Lots of cool fade-ins, and overall one of the more creative remixes I've heard for a song that is already spectacular in its own. Number 45 is SPL with Ghost Kill, Another artist just like Audio, who borders between darkstep and standard drum and bass, SPL's quirky and bizarre cut over here makes for one of the greatest 12 inches I've heard, with the other side containing Brainwash, one of the sickest and filthiest current value tracks. The track goes through different phases before leading to a drop that keeps the quirkiness of the beginning but is pretty sick and intense, leading to multiple variations of this formula and a few inclusions of haunting scenes at certain parts. Overall, it's a really creative track that puts SPL on the spot as an artist with lots of intriguing ideas under his sleeve. Number 44 is The Shooter with Wasteland. Mainly being part of the DJ mix Prepare for Assault by AK1200, which might be my favorite drum and bass DJ mix of all time, Wasteland introduces itself as a really chill and cheerful track, possibly the coziest one out of this list, with a smooth piano, subtle sound of water, an aquatic experience, alongside an old school break and a groovy bassline. Quite different from what you would expect out of the genre, but the tempo is there and it does have some more mechanical sounds in its second half. Number 43 is Pendulum with Blood Sugar. For me, Pendulum has been one of those names where I can't get the appeal. It sounded a bit too mainstream for me back in the day, and the later inclusions of industrial rock elements is where they really lost me. But back in their prime, they had a few tracks that I can't deny were absolute bangers, such as Slam and Tarantula and also Blood Sugar, one of the most dynamic and bombastic dance floor drum and bass tracks of the 2000s, with insane energy, goofy synths, and an insanely loud bass that makes for one of the best choices to test the bass on the speaker set. I really wish they would have more tracks like this, because this right here is peak Pendulum for me. Number 42 is Bad Matter and Scary with Fujiko, one of those tracks that I really discovered out of nowhere, and I was blown away by its insane ferocity. First of all, we have some really good sampling choice over here, which feels like it was being taken by an old Edo period Japanese movie with English dub, and it leads to one of the sickest drops in the history of the genre in my opinion. Then we get two beat patterns, one is the more standard drum and bass beat and the other one is darkstep adjacent, but to its core this is a brutal darkstep track, from its drumming to all of its surrounding elements. Number 41 is Steka and Skynet with Isolation. I'd say that the collaborative effort of Steka and Skynet goes closer to the futuristic dark atmosphere of Bad Company UK, but there's a strong sense of influence from old school breaks and other sounds that make their appearances in the 90s. And this is quite apparent with their greatest effort being the track Isolation, with its thick and melodic show bass, the distorted breaks and influences of jazz step that make their appearance later and elevate the experience to a whole other degree. A big standout in the scene with lengthy track and a ton of energy. Number 40 is The Outside Agency with a Flux Capacitor. One of those tracks that borders between gabber and drum and bass with a faster tempo than usual, but in my ears there's too much of a focus on the drum and bass aspect to let it go unnoticed. This duo, being one of the main names in Crossbreed, has done lots of stuff over the years, and the track I've chosen seems like a hidden gem that got popular on YouTube and I haven't found any physical release that is a part of. The atmosphere is dark and haunting, and it only gets crazier from here. There is a lot of glitch, sporadic beats, and just a batshit insane energy that gets more chaotic the more it goes on. Powerful track, not as chaotic as what you would get from breakcore, but it does border between those lines. At number 39 is Skrillex's Scary Monsters and Nice Stripes, the Dirty Phonics remix. Here is a case of a remix that I much prefer over the original, but yeah, Dirty Phonics killed it. Like the way it starts with the main melody fading in from a cutoff is so pleasing to listen to. The first drop feels like it goes to a dubstep fashion but with a drum and bass tempo, but the second drop is the standard drum and bass beat with enough change-ups in the main melody as well, so the two parts have some distinct differences and it makes the track flow so much better. It's a fun idea taking the formula on what I don't consider a favorite from Skrillex by any means, and Dirty Phonics turns it into something more fun and engaging. Number 38 is Calix and TB with Make Your Choice, with a cinematic introduction that turns it to one of the sickest futuristic bass lines. This track is a collab that shows both artists into their strongest form, a heavily imaginative track that borders between mellow and suspenseful to catch mechanical sounds and hard-hitting beats that also get cleverly cut off on specific parts. Undoubtedly one of the pinnacles of drum and bass and a spectacular track in terms of production and pacing. Number 37 is King Size with Aerosol, another track that's been taken out of the AK1200 DJ mix, Prepare for Assault. This is a pretty goofy track, especially for its time. It won't be that common to get tracks in the 90s similar to this, but this is an insanely addictive track with tons of creative ideas, toying with all of its surrounding sounds so that each one of them will have an impact, and it definitely succeeds to keep the flow rolling and have enough interesting ideas to it to make for a good pacing and not feel like it's dragging on. One of the most fun tracks out of this list. Number 36 is Comandante with Come Closer. We get to a more recent release, with Come Closer being a pleasant surprise in the sense that in an era where drum and bass tracks become shorter and shorter, this one manages in its 6-minute runtime to show how it's done and keep you engaged from start to finish. Absolutely astonishing dark step track that is filled with relentless energy from start to finish, a beat transition at the second half to spice things up and make for a better pacing, and the female vocals are the cream of the crop, a really powerful track. Number 35 is Maz with Horsepower. Undoubtedly one of the greatest tracks that I've discovered out of Rocket League is this dance floor drum and bass banger that is so fitting for a high-speed, adrenaline-fueled setting. This is such a cool track, from its drum fill to the drops to the bass. It's loud, in your face and super catchy with lots of different approaches that can easily pique your interest. You don't need the context of Rocket League obviously, you can just blast it and feel its power. Number 34 is Dread Warrior with the Funky Worm double bass mix. This track is only available in the Aphrodite DJ mix Urban Jungle, and I've not been able to find this track anywhere else in its entirety other than this 3-minute version on the DJ mix. But even with what we get in an incomplete package, this track is insanely addictive. It blends jungle with the G-Funk melody, and it's such a good combination. The bass and the beat drop is fantastic, and the additional drum pattern towards the end is an amazing touch. I just wish that we would get even more out of this insane track, otherwise this could land even higher on the list. Number 33 is Fractional with Water, possibly one of the main tracks that somewhat strays away from what drum and bass is known for, especially when it comes to the song structure. This is a heavily aggressive track when it comes to the drumming, but with a heavily moody atmosphere and scenes that come closer to industrial electronic and witch house. For me, Blood is one of the most creative electronic albums of the 2010s, and this blend of drum and bass with electro-industrial is a great indication on what I consider one of the most unique songs out of this list. Number 32 is Dez with Fangos. With the most recent jump-up track that succeeded to land this high on the list is this insanely creative and catchy track out of the Vision 03 Various Artists compilation, which I found to be extremely mediocre and disappointing, and out of the 33 tracks over here, this is the only one that became a grower and blew me away. Amazing use of its vocal samples, insane bass, cool transitions and pacing, and enough humorous attitude to make it one of the best jump-up cuts I've ever heard. Number 31 is Concord Dawn with Man for All Seasons, one of the most iconic drum and bass songs of the 2000s, with Paul McClaney on the vocals giving an amazing character to the track. This is a great use of a soulful atmosphere with an energetic instrumental and melancholic string sections. The sub-bass feels like a throwback to the 90s, but the rest has a fascinating modern feel to it, and in general it's a track with various elements that go so well together. Number 30 is Photek with Rinsa. While I could use a lot of the 90s tracks that were some of the best jazz step material we ever got, I decided to pick the more modern but also more ferocious track that was included in Gran Turismo 4, and was one of the main tracks that led me to the discovery of drum and bass. So in a sense, this is the track that started it all. To this day, this remains some of the best sub-bass I've ever heard. Like, the part with the drop and the more aggressive bass is great, but the final portion is where the track really shines. The drum fills are also spectacular, the structure and sounds of this bit, I don't think I've ever heard any other track like this at all, so in general a massive standout in Photek's extensive catalogue. Number 29 is Dillinja with Cybotron. From an album that wasn't all that special for me outside of the final self-titled track that had this absolute insane sub-bass that would distort any other sound and sit on top of them. It eviscerates anything in its path, even the beautiful soulful vocals at the second half. Darker and more intense than everything else I've heard from Dillinja, this is a song that became an exception to the rule and one of the jungle cuts that I would listen to the most from back in the day. Number 28 is the 70th Boulevard with Memories, one of the tracks that disguises itself at first, feeling like your average alternative rock track, but then the beat drops and it transitions to a drum and bass banger with gorgeous melancholic synths. It's a case of a beautiful song in its execution, really capturing the mood of a mellow cut, but keeping the energy that drum and bass is known for. It's an interesting combination that has been tried by other projects in the past for something more dynamic and upfront, but the more laid back and vulnerable feeling of Memories works tremendously well in its favor, an outstanding track for its time. Number 27 is Noisia with My World. Noisia's most notable work, Split the Atom, contains lots of great moments that can range from dubstep to neurofunk and house, and while Stigma is a fantastic track, the drop lasts too little for me and I wanted even more out of it, so I decided to go with My World that feels more complete with an even greater pacing. The laid-back introduction does not prepare you for this phenomenal bass on the beat drop. The moment the vocals start looping is where shit hits the fan, and I love the contrast between the intros and the drops. Apart from that, the track toys with enough change-ups and additional elements to keep the whole experience engaging from start to finish. Extremely cool track from Noisia in my opinion. Number 26 is Lucid Rimanes with Karate. This right here is just relentless darkstep with a ton of weird robotic and futuristic sounds, bass switch-ups, and a spectacular beat sequence that is just too extreme and over the top. It's filled with non-stop energy, and if you count out the long ambience at the end that drags on, for about 5 minutes this becomes one of the craziest ecstasy-driven experiences you can get with drum and bass. Absolutely sickening and brutal track. Number 25 is Counter-Strike and Mumbles with Sickness and Suffering, the Donny remix. While this is another track that contains the signature drumming that you get from Donny out of this period of time, the one thing that really stands out with this particular remix in my opinion is the introduction. I absolutely love this build-up. All of the explosive sounds that come and go, giving you the false impression that this drop is coming eventually, but after you just get a glimpse of what it's about to sound like, then it hits you. Those military drums are insane. There is a beat switch at the second half as well that goes even more into military style, so the track is basically separated in two parts, and in each one we get an impeccable flow of drum beats, abrupt volume cuts, and imaginative vocal sampling. Phenomenal remix. Number 24 is Ronnie Says and Represent with Brown Paper Bag. There is no way to make a top drum and bass list without the classics. Brown Paper Bag is jazz step at its finest, with pacing that is impressive the way it keeps you engaged for its entire 9-minute runtime. It starts with a laid-back tone with some guitars incorporated in the mix and the standard hip-hop type beat, then it isolates the bass with a different bass line, and when we get the drum and bass glory, it introduces a third bass line. The additional shaker type hi-hats later on are an excellent addition, and as it goes on, it keeps being this highly energetic track that sounds really good. Pretty revolutionary for 1997, and we rarely get tracks that have such a cool feeling to them. Number 23 is Dub 1 with Cry of War. This being a 12-inch with current value that I consider an indisputable 10 out of 10 means there has to be something really special about it. Cry of War is a horrifying and tense darkstep track whose build-ups are like sound effects taken from horror movies, and the build-up is tense, violent strings. The insanely aggressive drop takes elements from distorted drum and breaks and jungle-type sub-bass, and there's the inclusion of rap-style vocal sampling that gets manipulated in numerous occasions. Also, the beat switch at the second drop is one of the best in any track on this list. It keeps the whole experience fresh, it catches you off guard, and it's executed better than the first part. It's ferocious, unpredictable, and downright insane. I absolutely love this track. Number 22 is DJ Hazard with Platinum Shadow. This EP from DJ Shadow as a whole is absolutely phenomenal, one of the masters of jump up that makes those quirky wobbly bass sounds under some outstanding beats, and this release is where we get some of the most creative stuff he's ever put out. Insane kick, obnoxiously loud, and I mean that in a good way, and just so many different sounds he experiments with. Like, it sounds like a track that was super fun to make. Some of those sounds can definitely be a turn-off, but once you adapt to the absurd nature of jump up, DJ Hazard will become one of your all-time favorites in the genre. Number 21 is Apex with By the Way. This is one of those cases of a dance track being really moody and sad and melancholic, and this is the way I feel while listening to this masterpiece. The layers of sound make you feel like you're elevating. It's transcendental, a gorgeous and beautiful experience, from the vocals to the piano to the sub-bass being extremely powerful but giving space to the rest of the sounds to shine. It's a marvelous track in terms of production and aesthetics in a way very few tracks are able to achieve. Number 20 is Nero with Electron. The greatness of Electron gets overshadowed by what is arguably one of the best dubstep songs Nero have ever put out, Innocence. So good in fact that they landed on their debut album, which showcased a more clear direction towards dubstep as their main focus. Those who remember Nero at their first projects, they had some spectacular drum and bass tracks such as Act Like You Know and Solidaire, but this hidden gem overshadowed by Innocence is Nero at their peak, a dynamic and powerful drum and bass anthem that is extremely catchy, highly addictive, with some excellent drops and build-ups, and most notably those vocals filled to the brim with reverb and delay. Incredible pacing, and while it's shorter than what I'd get used to from the genre at the time, it still felt more than complete. Number 19 is DJ Fresh with Heavyweight. From those who know the cheerful dance floor drum and bass side of DJ Fresh, this is gonna feel like a massive left turn. That's what happened to me as I was listening to the second album, Kryptonite, and this is how the album ends, with a weirdly dark and intense drum and bass track, with haunting effects and a bizarre usage of bass pitch shifts both upwards and downwards at the same time. It's a huge surprise that showcases the capabilities of DJ Fresh as an artist. The overall pacing of this track is excellent, with the percussion work and the bass switch-ups kind of a hidden gem for DJ Fresh at least. Number 18 is Sub Focus with Rocket. What can be said about one of the most iconic bangers of the late 2000s, starting off as an ode to Daft Punk and then leading to one of the best drops in drum and bass history. This is dance floor drum and bass at its peak. In its short runtime, it manages to include so many different elements that make it more engaging the more you listen to. All of the effects, the overall sound and the aesthetics, everything's on point, one of the essentials for a dance party. Number 19 is Netsky with Iron Heart. Alongside a really cool video clip, Iron Heart is a sort of a laid-back track with an aura of mystery around it. The piano section is really imaginative, it has a really well-crafted beat, and it's really nice the way it transitions to all of its different moods, keeping you engaged and invested. For me, this is one of the most intriguing and well-made drum and bass tracks that goes to the more melodic side of things, while simultaneously being this awesome, mellow and moody experience. Number 16 is Technical Edge with the Rocos. To me, Technical Edge is the master of old school breaks. It is astonishing to me how he is able to craft so many incredible darkstep tracks with the same type of beats that we've heard over and over again, and still being able to put out so many creative ideas to this day. While there are lots of tracks I could pick, I decided to go with the most well-known one, the Rocos, mainly because of how it is able to bounce so many different ideas, sounds and structures in a 7-minute runtime, to the point where it even feels short. This is a marvelous achievement that very few artists are able to pull off, and Technical Edge has proven time and time again that he knows how to make a disgusting and furious darkstep track with a tone going on with it. The Penetration series offered some of the greatest works in the drum and bass scene period, and the Rocos is a solid proof of that. Number 15 is The Chemists with Drop Audio. In a sense, it felt like a shift to how I ended up appreciating more and more styles of music crammed together now that I think about it. And over the years, I've seen myself constantly returning back to this particular track, because this is a combination of rap and rock and drum and bass that even Chemists themselves have not been able to pull off that successfully in their later projects. But Drop Audio is insane, like the space, those impeccable drum fills, the energy, the ferocity of ID's rapping. It feels like such a revolutionary mix of sounds that can only happen once in a lifetime. Number 14 is London Electricity with Come Dancing. I'm pretty sure I got into London Electricity much later in my drum and bass journey in comparison to, well, most of the stuff that are on this list. And this particular track just blew me away in a sense that I was not expecting I'd be able to feel again. This is the most feel-good drum and bass track out of this whole list. It's cheerful, it's super catchy, it's super fun. The string arrangement with the constant use of cutoff and resonance is a beautiful touch. And once again, the way all of its sounds blend together, the structure with the multiple switch-ups, just add to the glory that is Come Dancing, a really questionable name for such a cheerful and blissful track. Number 13 is Black Sun Empire with Driving Insane. This album as a whole is filled with some of the greatest drum and bass tracks out there. Driving Insane is a heavily atmospheric but also really dynamic and energetic track. Lots of the tracks have huge build-ups, like the beat drop might come after 3 minutes, and while the self-titled track also has a long introduction, it does contain a powerful sub-bass line that makes it feel like a 2-part track with both sides flowing seemingly together. There is also a pitch shift at the bass at the second half, and lots of other sounds interconnecting together in a really fascinating fashion. The vocal sampling is also a pivotal highlight for this track in my opinion. This track is a spectacular blend of dark atmosphere and a really powerful multi-layered beat drop. Number 12 is Chase & Status with Take Me Away. To me, More Than a Lot has a ton of superb tracks, especially when it comes to a more commercial and mainstream sound of drum and bass and dubstep in some cases. Some of those tracks contain some of the most imaginative vocal sampling I've ever heard, like Hurt You and also Take Me Away. In terms of the beat and the bass, it's pretty standard, but it's this soulful sampling, the way all of the parts are compiled together. It's really elevating. This way of using vocal parts is mind-blowing to me. I wish I would be able to come up with such creative ways to use vocals with such cohesion and craftsmanship. It is a really cool track with a nostalgic 90s flair to it and really impressive in its execution. Number 11 is Logistics with Welcome to the Future. To me, Logistics is the greatest artist on liquid drum and bass. There is no other producer in this style whose music invokes to me such a sense of magic and bliss. But the interesting thing about Logistic is that he is capable in making masterpieces in some other heavier drum and bass approaches, such as the case with Futuristic, Welcome to the Future, which manages in its short runtime to contain so many incredible ideas to it. The beat is quite unique and the sub-bass is extremely powerful. The robotic type vocals are really cool and in general is an immaculate track in terms of sound and production that back when I listened to it as one of my introductions to drum and bass, it felt really refreshing. And so many years later, I haven't really found many other tracks similar to this. One of the strong highlights for an artist who is filled with numerous 10 out of 10s in my opinion. Number 10 is DJ Crash with Future Unknown. Prior to me even knowing what drum and bass was, this track was part of a various artist compilation from Talking Loud called 21st Century Soul, which was like one of my introductions to electronic and world music, and it still remains one of my favorite albums of all time. It would be kind of a stretch to even call this track jungle because it's really apparent that it takes influence from other genres such as trip hop or downtempo, but the tempo is there and it has sounds that would lead into a more old school jungle direction. But even in this regard, this is one of the most unique tracks out of this list. After a point it really feels like a collage of multiple sound effects that are put together in such an impressive manner. The track is really interesting in its pacing. You rarely get stuff like this. Another interesting aspect out of this track is the background ambience and how it completely affects the mood of the track, because when it's present it's moody and somewhat melancholic, but it's also pretty comforting. Its absence though makes the empty space really apparent and all of a sudden the track becomes eerie. And this transition can be really abrupt from one mood to the next, and I like how there's this constant back and forth. It's one of the most creative tracks out of the list in my opinion, and a significant part of my childhood as well. Number 9 is Peter Curtin with Shredder. This is possibly the most simplistic and straightforward track out of this entire list, but from the moment I heard this, I was blown away by how violent and brutal this is. Peter Curtin has done some of the most visceral, darkstep and crossbreed tracks out there, and this is just 5 minutes of absolute pure filth, insanely relentless drums that are repetitive and non-stop insanity. Pretty monotone, just absolutely disgusting and sickening beats. I don't really need to add anything else about this. There's not much to it to discuss. This is just unforgiving fury and it goes super crazy. Number 8 is Limewax with Flashbacks. To me, Limewax is one of the greatest darkstep and skullstep producers, and it's amazing that he started producing at a really young age and has made tons of insane bangers. But I decided to go with what is one of the rarest Limewax songs, and also what I would argue the weirdest one. This is a track that is not available to any physical media that I know of, and it's an 8-minute madness. It's like a circus track with weird unsettling laughs, sounds that imitate vomiting, and lots of other sound effects in reverse. In its beat, it's pretty standard in the Limewax formula, but it's all of the surrounding sounds, the goofy atmosphere, the unsettling humorous fashion that makes this a one-of-a-kind experience. The second half in particular that introduces the main melody and the most dynamic sections is extremely addictive, and then there are those reverse vocal samples at the build-up sections that are weirdly interconnected and structured in such a way that I find it fascinating. It's an oddball of a track with a ton of appeal and energy to it. Number 7 is Goldie with Timeless. This is an absolute classic and an essential to anyone who is into drum and bass. What is really fascinating about Timeless is that this is a 21-minute track, and miraculously enough it doesn't drag on. Instead, I feel like I want even more out of it, which I don't recall any other track being able to achieve that for such a lengthy runtime. But there's indeed so many layers, so many cool transitions that flow seamlessly, and the way it's all interconnected. It's like a prog song, it starts the way it ends, and those vocals from Diane Charlemagne on this, my goodness, they're absolutely astonishing. Gorgeous track, beautiful production, so many changes of tones, the drumming, the bass, everything is so well put together, a transcending experience. Number 6 is Subwave with Digital Symphony. Before Subwave would become way more popular, going to entirely different directions of EDM, he made this masterpiece on Tech Edge recordings that not only captures really well the dark aesthetics of technical hits, it is truly one of the most impeccable darkstep tracks ever written. Right off the bat, I believe that the main starting melody with the string arrangements and the soothing piano is one of the most depressing in any of the tracks in the genre. Then it transitions into this eerie and filthy track with one of the most addictive distorted bass lines in the genre. What follows with a really standard but cool beat is some excellent additional background sounds and great usage of open hi-hats. The pacing of this track is just perfect, the way all of the patterns tie together, just a hauntingly beautiful track that needs more recognition. Number 5 is Spore with Aztec. Spore was one of my introductions to the world of drum and bass, and most particularly this specific track. And this was one of the moments that I knew I am now really hooked with drum and bass and I need more in my system. The way this made me feel at the time is indescribable. There's so much energy to it, all of the melodies are so addictive, and that beat with a punchy bass drop, I was in love. Super hype track, heavily energetic and very well paced, making every pattern meaningful, undoubtedly one of the most spectacular drum and bass songs ever made. Number 4 is Danny Breaks and AK1200 with Tip Porn VIP. This track is nasty and also one of the most hype bangers the genre has to offer. It is filled with kinky sounds, a ton of moaning. This is an NSFW track, okay? It's not just a title, there is porn sampling all over here. Apart from that, you get an astonishing, aggressive beat, especially for the 90s, one of the sickest bass lines ever made, and moaning sounds playing alongside the snare to give even more punch. The way it adds the open hi-hats also gives an extra punch, the background ambience is mesmerizing. There are so many amazing things about this track, from its filthy and sickening production to the nasty porn samples. It's such a dirty track that has a special place in my heart for being one of the best tracks to dance to. Number 3 is Panacea with Found the Lover. Over this whole list we've seen some great cases of sampling, but to me the one artist that surpasses them all, the master of sampling, is Panacea. Case in point, one of the most essential drum and bass masterpieces ever made, Found the Lover. No one else is able to craft sampling in such a way like Panacea. He's going strong for decades and has experimented with multiple approaches to his sound, while Found the Lover is one of the more accessible cuts and going to a more standard drum and bass style, it keeps being really creative with bass, the multi-layered drumming, the superb lead synths, and of course this gorgeous sampling. Super catchy and insanely energetic from start to finish. A must hear for fans of drum and bass. Number 2 is Current Value with You Can't Play God. If you've seen my videos, you know that I consider Current Value one of my all-time favorite producers. I would listen and search for his stuff extensively for years. I could easily make a list with top 100 Current Value songs, and it probably won't cover everything I want to mention, from his most popular stuff to tracks that most people probably don't know of. So listing out one was a difficult choice, but I decided to go with one of the most batshit insane tracks in Skullstep, the nightmarish and horrifying You Can't Play God from his self-titled EP in 2008, in my personal favorite Current Value era where he would make the most ferocious tracks. Skullstep is known for its insane drumming, resembling sounds of like Jang and Punch. Imagine this like a pristine version of grindcore drumming. This track contains drumming that I've never heard in any other track in the genre. Not only that, it uses like 6 different drum patterns, each one with its own distinct sounds, and all of them just clash together back and forth, placed in a way that sounds genius, like coming up with so many unique drum patterns and make a cohesive follow-up from one to the next. It blows my mind. This is also undoubtedly one of the most aggressive songs in here. This is adrenaline, intensity and ecstasy to the max. Ridiculous, downright relentless, blood pumping and hard hitting. This is one of the all-time picks for current value right there. And finally at number 1 with my favorite drum and bass song of all time is Sinking by State of Mind. The New Zealand duo created a mind-bending experience back in 2006 with one of the most beautiful songs ever made. It's not really an easy task to make a 7-minute track structured perfectly from start to finish, but Sinking is really one of the greatest examples of a track being properly long and leaving all of its ideas have their appropriate time, not dragging on and not feeling too short and just wanting more out of it. It really doesn't feel like a 7-minute song, and I love every single moment about it. From the way this incredible vocal sampling is introduced, just creeping in an unsettling manner, and then flowing seamlessly with its lead synths, leading to what is one of the greatest build-ups and drops in the history of drum and bass. It hits you with a blast of saw bass, a standard yet effective beat for the occasion, and then the track is separated in 3 sections, each one of them with its own unique character and mood, and highlighting every single thing the track is going for. Every sound has a purpose, and the track takes the time to remind you that, in case you missed its impact at first. To me, this is, not just in terms of drum and bass, this is really one of my favorite tracks of all time. It is extremely influential, it blew me away when I first heard it, has kept me company ever since, and has become a pivotal part of my adolescence and my music journey. And that is all for my 50 favorite drum and bass songs of all time, one track per artist. What's your opinion on this list and what are your favorite drum and bass songs? Let me know down in the comments. Leave a like if you enjoyed the video, subscribe for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you all in the next video. Goodbye.